Hi and welcome to Anatomy and Physiology of the Brain. We're just going to go through some basics of where the lobes are, and also I'm going to talk about some of the meninges, the membranes. So first of all, we're going to start off with the temporal lobe. Turn your head. The temporal lobe is predominantly on the side of the head. So it is around, along, all the way around to the back. That there, that's the temporal lobe. This is important for language, memory, and your stress mechanisms. We have a hippocampus in the middle, through here, along with the amygdala, which is all part of the stress mechanism as well, in the temporal lobe. Okay, so we'll go to the frontal lobe now. This covers the motor cortex. We go around the front, so of the brain, comes across, up, and around. This is the frontal lobe. Around and up through there. Now, as you can see, the frontal lobe comes all the way down to the side. Now, just where we are at the back, or the posterior of the frontal lobe, is the cortex, the motor cortex. And that is along the top of the border of the visual lobe. The motor cortex is about moving the body. When we give it instruction to run, then the motor cortex works to go to tell us that our legs need to start moving. We also have the sensory cortex, which is about the sensations which come up through our body. So the motor cortex sends signals down through the body. The sensory cortex registers signals from the body. So things like pain. The sensory cortex is just behind, but on the front, the anterior of the parietal lobe. And that is the sensory cortex down through there. Now along here is also the homunculus, which I will talk about later. So, that's the temporal, the visual. Now we go to the parietal. We'll use green. The parietal is about what and where things are in space. So that comes at just slightly at the back of the head, goes onto the temporal lobe, meets the sensory cortex, and comes up. So that is the parietal lobe on one side. Lovely. Now the last but not least is the visual lobe, which is right at the back. Now could you sit up for me and look that way? Beautiful. So the visual lobe is the last. This is all about what we see, how we see it, and the contents of what our eyes are seeing. The visual lobe is all around the back and is protected with a very thick bone called the occipital bone. Here we see things. When we see in our vision, the world is upside down, but when it's converted into the visual lobe, it becomes the right way up. So we have it tells us what things are around the base, and where things are going into the parietal, about where they are in space. So we have we have the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, the parietal lobe, and the visual lobe. Thank you.